Wind and solar energy play a key role in Denmark's green transition, and production is growing by the day. But there's a missing piece in the development of the green power grid of the future. That is, where is the power going to come from in the future when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining? Today we're using, inter alia, coal, natural gas and biomass from abroad to produce power when wind and solar energy is lacking. We don't have a stable green energy source on days without wind and solar. But in the future, two technologies, power-to-x and xtopower, may help solve the problem. Power-to-x means storing green energy in the form of green fuels, and xtopower means using the green fuels to produce power. We'll return to that. First, let's concentrate on 5 challenges of our power grid that the two technologies can help solve. In the first place, it's bad for the climate that today we use fossil energy sources when there's a lack of sunlight and wind. Secondly, we may incur problems related to supply security in the long term, partly because, concurrently with the green transition, there'll be fewer investments in sourcing new fossil energy resources. Third, a greater risk of power outages may arise in the future as the production of power from solar and wind fluctuates sharply. Fourth, there are considerable fluctuations in the price of electricity. On sunny and windy days, power is cheap. On other days, the price goes up. And fifth, wind turbines often can't get rid of all the power they produce when the wind blows heavily, and that's why they're often turned off. Power-to-x and xtopower can help solve the 5 challenges. One of the green fuels you can produce with power-to-x is ammonia, and we're particularly betting on that at xtopower Energy. This is how the process takes place. We send power through a tank of water. In our case, the power comes from wind turbines and solar cells. At one end of the tank, oxygen bubbles up, and at the other end, hydrogen bubbles up. The hydrogen we mix with nitrogen from the air, and from that, we get ammonia, a green fuel that has a lot in store, among other things, for the shipping industry. But we can also use ammonia to produce power for the power grid, and that's what we call xtopower. Xtopower can either take place using combustion or fuel cells. In the short to medium term, at xtopower Energy, we're going to use combustion. In the combustion process, NOx gas is formed, but it's converted to nitrogen and water at the plant itself, just like it's done in power plants today. Hence, the process is close to 100% green. Using power-to-x and xtopower, we can then store excess power from wind turbines and solar cells and produce green power on days with no sun or wind. As a byproduct, heat is also produced that can be used in the supply of heating. Power-to-x and xtopower can help solve the 5 challenges of our power grid. With large-scale production, more green power will get into the grid. Supply security would improve because we'd become less dependent on fossil energy sources and biomass from abroad. The power grid can also get more stable as we obtain a new power source whose levels can easily be regulated. And at the same time, the price of power may become more stable because in the long run, xtopower can turn out to be cheaper than power from coal and natural gas. There will also be less waste, for it will no longer be necessary to turn off wind turbines to the same extent as is done today. In fact, flexible power-to-x plants, close to the areas where power is being produced, are, in our view, a prerequisite for the logic of setting up substantially more wind turbines and solar cells in Denmark. And safety is under control. We'll store ammonia in cooled, non-pressurized tanks, surrounded by concrete in sparsely populated areas, a method that's been used internationally for decades. Read more about our plans at xtopowerenergy.dk.